Microprocessor, what the chip looked like. Of course, it was a lot smaller than that. And this is the calculator that it was to be used in, one of several different designs. And it shows a circuit board, and you can see the microprocessor is the package that has sort of the gold lid on it. This was our first ad, which was 1971, announcing a new era of integrated electronics. And this was actually, I believe, a full, like, double-page ad.
Although the sales grew slowly because it takes time to design it in and so on, and to create new products and have enough volume to feed a factory, the movement was irreversible, and an industry, a real industry was created.
Noyce now hit the road. Like a traveling preacher, he evangelized on behalf of the new device. He wasn't trying to create a personal computer industry, which was still several years away. Instead, Noyce promoted the microprocessor as a far more general-purpose technology.
My dad used to draw the analogy of the fractional horsepower motor, where originally electric motors were things you had in a factory that ran all the belts that ran the sanding machines and the cutting machines. But eventually, when smaller motors were made, they could be put into vacuum cleaners and washing machines and coffee grinders and all kinds of things that really were not envisioned back when the electric motor was invented.
Noyce's vision was that the microprocessor could be used to put simple intelligence into everyday devices, from elevators to petrol pumps, what became known as embedded control.
And as far as I know, the embedded control applications probably represents something like an order of magnitude. More processors go into that area than go into desktop and notebook computers. Just about 2 weeks ago, I went in to get my third pacemaker, in other words, so still healing up from the incision, but that has a microprocessor in it, and when I go see the doctor, he puts a device on it, and it reads out, tells out all sorts of information about what my heart's been doing, and that way he can see if there's any warning signs and any additional steps have to be done.
Noyce might not have directly invented the memory chip or the microprocessor, but he was certainly their godfather. To all outward appearances, Noyce looked to be riding high, but those closest to him knew that the picture was deceptive. In one crucial area, his marriage to Betty, Noyce had been struggling for years. Unhappy in California, Betty was spending increasing time in her native New England. Noyce, meanwhile, was not always faithful.
My father thought that the divorce, when it came, was really a failure, and that he felt very bad for a couple of years. He was the only person in his family to ever go through a divorce.
Noyce's unhappiness was compounded by the layoff of a third of Intel's employees in 1974, the result of a downturn in the global economy following the oil crisis the previous year.
I can recall walking into Bob's office, and he was looking down at his desk, and he was quite unhappy. He said, I don't see why we have to negatively affect people's lives for a few cents to give to Wall Street, if you will.
The company, even before the layoffs, was too big for Bob's comfort zone. There were too many issues of growth, organization, infighting, the same kind of thing that made him miserable as Fairchild.
Noyce decided to re-examine his role at Intel and step back from some of his day-to-day responsibilities.
Noyce lost his direction for a while in the mid-1970s. So much of what had defined him to himself was in flux.
But this period of directionlessness would not last long. Noyce was about to take on some remarkable new roles that would define the remainder of his life and the future of Silicon Valley. On Thanksgiving Day 1975, Noyce remarried to Intel's personnel director, Ann Bowers.
Bob and I talked about what he was going to do next a lot. He felt that his chief contribution was not technical anymore, but was giving back in terms of helping promising entrepreneurs that he thought had really good ideas to go forward.
Noyce's most significant relationship by far with a young entrepreneur began in 1977 when he was introduced to a 22-year-old named Steve Jobs, co-founder of a small computer manufacturing company called Apple.
Steve was a very compelling young person. He had a big vision. He was very determined. As a person, he intrigued Bob, less than his actual technology at that point. He just started showing up at our house on his motorcycle usually, and so then there would be these extended conversations because I'd feed him and they'd talk, and we took him on some vacations with us. He was fun to have around, if sometimes a little difficult, because he would he had expectations that people would help him in ways they couldn't always fulfill.
We had a dinner here back in the 70s with Governor Jerry Brown, and quite a few members of the industry were here, and Steve was here with Bob. You know, Bob Noyce just took the lead almost automatically because he would ask penetrating questions. He would begin addressing the issues very pointedly. Steve sat there admiringly. I think he saw everybody else as sort of people making things, where he said Bob as a thinker.
There's a type of family tree in Silicon Valley. And in the same way that Steve Jobs came to Noyce for advice and mentorship when Apple was young, the founders of Google came to Jobs for advice and mentorship when their company was young. So Noyce can be seen as the grandfather to many of these young companies here in the Valley.
It wasn't just in Silicon Valley that Noyce was seen as the elder statesman of the industry. His achievements were now being recognized at the highest levels. Noyce tried to use this influence to draw attention to what he increasingly saw as a mortal threat to the American semiconductor industry: competition from Japan. The Americans didn't realize it yet, but they were swimming against the tide.
Most American companies, Intel included, did not put a lot of capacity